don't know. It depends on the circumstances. I think I generally get told to shut up when I start talking.
Oh, brilliant.
We had,
Well, good evening.
just for
Go on, Chris.
context, Bev, we had Dilksy on a couple of weeks ago. I was like, right, so who's got any questions? And it was just like tumbleweed of just silence of everyone just looking, going, "Mm."
Well, you can only blame yourself for that because you invited me along to Morocco, which has meant I'm out walking continuously and missed it.
Well, yeah,
I was
that's
going
it.
to say
You've
you're out
got to do
walking,
your
you were
training.
tired, so you have no questions.
I know I was literally out on the in the Peak District walking when he did it because I completely misjudged what time it was.
Well, never mind, eh? Right, so Bev, I'll let people into the room if needed. But
Yeah,
if you want to sort of give a bit of an introduction to yourself, a little bit of an intro about sort of like what you've done, why you do it, the sort of bit of a background about what the spine race is and that sort of thing. We
yeah,
um, we actually seen a couple of weeks ago when we was in the Peak District, the winter spine race starting. And we seen the guys obviously going over, and Phil was there with me and a couple of others which aren't in the group now. But there was a lot of people going, "Oh, what's going on?" And I was like, "Oh, it's listen, it's the winter spine race." And they're like, "Oh, what is it?" And I was like, "Listen, they're going to finish in Scotland, basically." And they're like, "What?" So I thought it'd be a good idea to go right. Well, I know someone that's done it, so you can go from there.
so yeah, pretty mad race. So I should have been on the start line for the winter this year, and I instead I've got two bulging discs in my back, which we're on the right trajectory with. Um, and I've probably got those from training for the spine race, for the winter and the summer for the past 24 months. I was on the start line last winter, got to mile 190, and then had some serious problems with one of my feet, which was probably due to running in ice spikes. Wouldn't recommend it. Wouldn't be doing it again for the distances I did it. And then I did the summer one. Um, got to the finish. I had the most horrific blisters. It was so hot. It was worse than the winter. I'm much more of a I'm from Yorkshire. I prefer the cold, don't like the heat. We don't get much heat, do we?
Nope.
Um, so yeah, I'd much rather be on the start line of any winter race than a summer race. So I don't know why I ever enter summer events. Um, so yeah, that's been my recent sort of challenges that I've been working towards. But my background is I'm not a runner. I was the person at school that used to skive off. I'd write myself notes. I'd refuse to do PE because I didn't believe that teachers could tell you what to do. I'd be taking myself off during cross country to go for a fag. I had a bit of a wayward childhood. Not through anything bad that had happened, just found drink, drugs, partying, really liked it, enjoyed the lifestyle. And in my mid 20s, I knew that, it's not, you can't do it for a long time. Um, Always understood health, always understood fitness. I'd started going to the gym and I needed something to get my head into. I'm an all or nothing person. Needed something to get my head into that took me away from that party lifestyle, stopped me just wanting to go see DJs all weekend and um, be out my face. My brother was boxing training at the time and was mega into his running. And I said, "Will you take me running, dude?" Because I couldn't run. I could barely run two steps. And he said, "Only if you quit smoking." So typical like me style. That's it. Quit smoking after smoking since I was 14. I think I was about 27 at the time. And never smoked a cigarette since. And he took me running. So did the whole run walk thing. Um, and the race that I'd really wanted to do was the Paris 10 race in Catterick. I'd seen some of the guys from work had done it the year before and raised a load of money. And that's what I worked towards. And I think probably gave myself about 3, 4 months. I did it, and then I stopped running for a bit. Well, I didn't stop. I dropped back, and then I wanted to do it again the next year, so I picked it back up again. Um, and sort of went all in. And then after I'd done that, my brother sort of challenged me. Typical sibling rivalry. He was like, "Right, you can do a half marathon next. That's the next distance." I was like, "All right then." And then he'd run a marathon, and he was like, "Right, you can do a marathon next." I was like, all right then. And then he was like, right, do a 50K. All right then. And by this point, he was doing 100 milers. So I was like, well, I'll do a 50 miler. Oh, I'm gonna have to do a 100 miler now, and that was it. It was just a slippery slope. Um, Majority of my stuff is in the hills. When I'd sort of got to that, like after I'd done a couple of road marathons, I'd started going into the hills with my brother, and we'd done like the Yorkshire Three Peaks and things like that. And I just fell in love with the open space, the green space. My work history is in the angling industry, so I was brought up around water, spent a lot of time in water, always enjoyed sort of like fishing. So being in that green space in the mountains, really, really loved it. And I remember I'd not long been sort of into the mountains and stuff like that. And the spine race was this like super underground race, like cult race. You couldn't follow it online, like you couldn't dot watch it. The dot watching hadn't started yet. And it was just sort of like a word of mouth thing. And I remember my brother telling me about it, and I was like, that's the race I want to do. Like that is the race I want to do. And I think it took me 7 years of what I considered like building up the skills, learning how to navigate, going on outdoor first aid courses, spending just like every winter going into the hills, testing kit, learning about being out there, learning about being on my own, navigating in the dark. Um, it's not one of those races that you'd think, but you know what, I'm going to enter that on a whim. Which I think nowadays there's a lot of sort of really nice into the outdoors and into challenging things events that you can do where they're super comfortable, super safe, really, really inviting. But yeah, I'd sort of set my heart on this thing, and I was like, right, I'm just gonna have to build up all these skills. um, but I think for me, and I know Chris will stand by this because I've sort of followed Chris and know what he's like about making sure people have the right skills, and especially seeing a lot of the things that are going on with mountain rescue in the last few years, that having those correct skills and the correct equipment when you go into these spaces and knowing how to look after yourself and also anybody else you're with is more important and is arguably as important as your fitness. And I think a lot of people get so wrapped up in, you see these young whippersnappers and they're like, oh, under 20-minute 5K PB, and the next thing you know, they're climbing Snowdon and a pair of trainers, and you think, great guys, but it's not very safe. So yeah, that is, my sort of my background, how I got into running, how I got back into, being in the outdoors. I'm super, super passionate about it, just getting more people moving, getting more people outside, especially getting more women out sort of into the outdoors, feeling safe. We come up with a few more barriers, generally feeling a little bit more unsafe than men. I get that there is guys that feel unsafe as well. It's one of those things. It can be daunting. The dark. Going into somewhere you've not seen, or going trying to go off navigating on your own. But yeah, that barrier for women. Funnily enough, I was only out the other week, and the old cat calling thing, where they whistle out the window and you think, Christ, I'm 40 years old. Have you not got anybody else you whistle at? But you're just you, and it still goes on, and you think, yeah, it's not great for, encouraging people to go running and in the dark in the winter. Um, so yeah, that is my background. I'm, not a quick runner. I'm not fast. I'm not, a special person in the gym. I am genuinely just a busy person, a single dog mum with a busy work life that enjoys going into the hills, challenging myself, but always making sure I'm safe as well. So each one of you tell me a little bit about yourselves.
Well, I'll just stop there, Bev, because
Go on, Phil,
I
you
want to
kick
just
me off,
delve in.
Josh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I just want to delve into that because there's a couple of bits there I'll forget if I don't bring it up now. But something that I loved what you just said then is you said, so from picking to do the race to do it to actually doing it was 7 years of training pretty much. Now, the majority of people, like I'll put something about that on social media at some point, but because the majority of people think of goals and they just think like, oh well, what can I do in the next 8 weeks? Or what can I do in the next sort of 3 months and stuff, which is like what normal people do in a way because it's sort of like short term and it's easy to be able to see it there. But all these sort of like 8 week running plans, 12 week running plans, all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, and I obviously my clients will sort of like vouch for me here. I'm like, listen, what's the long game? What can we do in the next year, 2 years, 3 years? Like that's where the big stuff, the magic happens when you're consistent for that amount of time. So like listening to you there say, oh yeah, it took 7 years to get used to it. I'm glad you've said that because everyone now will start thinking, go, oh, he's right. Actually, yeah, it does take this amount of time.
Yeah,
But what does your training look like over a week then? So you like
it
running,
is.
you've said you like running around green space. Do you live in green space? Because I know I definitely don't. It's quite built up where I live and I hate running around my sort of area.
Yeah, so I live in a village that's just on the edge of the Yorkshire Wolds. So I can get onto the Yorkshire Wolds Way, which is technically one of our national trails. It's not super hilly, but it's quiet. It is very quiet. It's arguably more quiet than the Peak District, the Lake District, all those places that have become super, super popular. But yeah, it's not the terrain that I like. It's what I'd call like groomed, lovely like rolling hills. Um, but I still during the week, a lot of my miles have to be just out the front door. Still do some road miles because it's just easier. And yeah, it's you've got to work with the time you've got to adapt. All my miles have to be done in the morning before work. So majority throughout the year, my miles are done in the dark. I get up at 4, go for a run, then I have to take the dog out, then I get my gym miles in, then I go to work because if I left my training till after work, 50% of the time it won't get done because my brain is fried. I've had all my energy zapped. I deal with people, deal with like we all do as you seem to get older, you seem to deal with shit at work,
Yeah.
don't you?
So you haven't got that
And
sort of like mental grit to be able to push the miles then? Is that what you're sort of talking about? You're sort of mentally fatigued, so when you can't go and push physically
I,
because you
I
haven't got that
could,
sort of like aggression.
I could, and I do go out. I go out on a Tuesday. I go to do a track session once a week, and I take the dog out after work. But I just know that if I want to enjoy that training and do quality training, I want to get it in before work because I want to do it with the most energy as well. And once I've been at work all day, I've given most of my energy to work, and I just you do naturally, don't you? You
Yeah.
sort of you wouldn't reserve that energy at work and be like, oh, I can't put my whole effort into that. Well, I know I couldn't. I wouldn't. Whatever I'm working on, I'll put everything into it. So I'd leave everything at work, and I'd be like, oh, I've left nothing for the gym, or I've left nothing for a run. Um, and I do prefer running after I've had a good couple of meals and things like that. But just I wouldn't enjoy it as much. And I know there'd be days when you get stuck at work or you get stuck and you've got to send some more emails when you get back. And yeah, I just think if I get it up and make it a priority, that's we spend a third of our life sleeping, we spend a third of our life at work, and we spend a third of our life doing what we want, don't we? Which sometimes involves traveling to work, having to go food shopping, doing all the shit jobs. But some of that is, meant to be doing the things that you enjoy, um, and keeping fit, keeping healthy. And I think I'm going to prioritize that. And I'm a morning person, so I'm getting up, I'm doing it in the morning, I'm doing what, makes me happy, what I enjoy, working towards my goals, and then work can have the rest of me. And then I'll go back to sleep, repeat.
Yeah. So what does a structured week of training look like for you then? So this next week coming up, for example.
So Monday is always usually my rest day, because I've usually done sort of bigger miles at the weekend. So I'll have Monday as a rest day. Um, I'll still always do some kind of stretching. I've still got usually some kind of imbalance that you're working on. There's always, something that's a little bit of a niggle, or like I'm just coming back from injury. So I've got some specific stretches and specific core stuff to do. And then Tuesday is my double run day. So I'll do a run in the morning, um, go to the gym, and then I'll do a run club in the evening, which is either a speed session or some easy miles. We alternate between weeks. Um, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, again, morning run. It's always like an hour in the morning, usually followed by the gym. And then come to a weekend, it's my longer run stuff. So depending on what I'm training for and where I am in that training plan, it would be anything from, a 2 hour run one day and maybe an hour run the next day to, depending again, if I was training back in the middle of a block for something like the spine, it might be 8 hours one day, 8 hours the next day because you're just building time on feet. Um, but that's me. I've always enjoyed the high mileage. I've always enjoyed a lot of time on feet. But you don't have to put that volume in to do things like that. When I was first training for 100 milers, it was all there was always this thing that you needed to peak out doing a 100-mile training week. It was like that was the pattern that everybody followed. Like there only used to be one way to train for a marathon. Now it's completely different, and people, there's all different ways of training. Some people only do sort of one long run, and they'll only really do the volume that you do to train for a marathon. So it's all just this belief that actually you can overcook yourself, and you can go in overtrained. So as long as you've got the ability to run a marathon, then you should have the ability to do 100 miles if you pace yourself. So but yeah, I've always enjoyed the sort of the high volume. I enjoy those miles. I enjoy being out. And I specifically enjoy those long days in the hills. So if there's an excuse for me to go spend 8 hours bimbling around in the Peak District or the Lake District or on the Pennine somewhere, I'm there. But it's all about, for me, training in the kit as well for those weekends, those long runs. If you're going to go do something, if you were training for, a marathon, you'd wear your marathon training shoes and your shorts and your t-shirt. If you're training for, to go hike in the mountains, like some of you are to the Alps mountains, you're testing that jacket, you're testing that rucksack, you're testing that kit. Um, and for me, that's such a key thing as well. There's been a local event on at the weekend, and it was like a 12-hour endurance thing, a little bit based on like the backyard ultra thing where they're doing 4 miles every hour on the hour, but it was capped at 12 hours. And there was like a WhatsApp group with a lot of them in, some of the guys I know, and they were buying shoes the day before. And I was like, when you're like, oh my God, that would just freak me out. I couldn't do it. Like, I just like, it just blew my mind. I'm one of those people that's prepped everything to the like nth degree and tested everything. And they're just buying shoes the day before. And I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah, because
the rest of
realistically,
the
even like
listeners.
from a neurological level, you don't know how it's going to feel on your feet, do you? Or the kit, and you're thinking about your kit then rather than thinking about what you're having to do.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just like, I'm one of the, I will go to, if you put all this time and effort and money into something, like you just don't want to leave any stone unturned when it comes to prep, do you? It's like if you're going on holiday, you write your list to make sure you don't forget your passport, you don't forget this, you don't forget that. You take all the things, you make sure that you get to the airport on time. It's like if you've booked to do an event or you're training for something or putting all this effort into something, like don't leave any stone unturned. And then when you're at that start point or you're setting off on that adventure, you're as prepared the best you can be. Um, so yeah, it's all for me, and it's nice to feel prepared. It gives you that confidence boost. You can get in your head about these things, can't you? It's like, oh, I'm not good enough. I've not done enough training. I've not done this. I've not done that. Or I'm there's gonna be everybody's gonna be fitter than me. I remember going off to climb. It was when I went to climb two call, and I was like, oh my God, everyone's going to be so fit. Like, my brother was just unbelievably fit at the time, and I was like, I'm going to be like the last person. They're all going to be waiting for me on the mountain. And then it was just, it couldn't have been further from the truth. But I'd got so in my head about it, like, I, I could have like stopped myself going, or and I was just like, look, you've prepared everything. You're not going to be the last person. And it doesn't matter if you are. Like you've got the right to be there. Everybody's got the right to go and do these things. So yeah, just being being prepared stops me panicking about that as well, thinking, well, I've not got the right shoes, or I've not got the right socks, or I've not got the right jacket. It's like if you prepped all that, you've tested it all before, you know that's okay. Anything you do, you've got to get yourself there without picking up a cold or falling over or cockling your ankle the day before. 'Cause we've all done that, haven't we?
Yeah, yeah. I remember I was going for, I had an MMA fight actually, it was a semi-pro MMA fight, and a person I know went, "Oh, listen, come in, I'll do a sports massage for you, so like free your legs up and stuff before the day before." Oh yeah, great, yeah, thanks. Woke up the next day, I couldn't barely walk.
Yeah.
I was like, I was going into the, like, I remember getting in the minibus and I got out of the minibus and fell over out the minibus because my legs was that bad. And I remember my coach just looked at me and just went, "What the fuck, mate? Like, it just got me." And I was like, "It was not my fault."
He did it to me.
Yeah.
You always say, don't they, you shouldn't have like massages and stuff, um, like at least 24 hours before anything. Because ideally, if you're having one, you shouldn't train the next day, or at least for like a good 12 hours,
Mhm.
because they can cause a bit of sort of damage, can't they, as they're releasing everything. But
Yeah.
you won't be doing that again, will you?
No, no. So you can imagine if I felt every kick, every single kick, it was like dead legs. Like, ah. Right, I'll open the floor up, guys. If you wanna, if people got questions and stuff.
I can
Phil,
start with a very basic one. So you said that you wake up early, and but how do you prioritize your sleep? It said that women need 8, 9 hours of sleep. Also, obviously, the no screen kind of thing, which I'm definitely struggling with. I don't struggle with the sleep, but it's screens before going to sleep. So, how do you like if you wake up early, do you still get your hours in, and how does that side of things work for you?
So I do my very, very best to put my phone down at 7:30 and then go upstairs, wash my face, all that jazz, brush your teeth, get into bed, read my book, and fall asleep for 8 o'clock. In reality, that probably only happens twice a week. It's usually probably 7:30 because you pick the thing up, don't you? Somebody's text you and you're like, you feel like you need to reply, or you open up Instagram and you doom scroll and you think, what am I doing? Like, get off it. So my sleep's not perfect. But if I see that 7:30 thing, I'm like, woman, for God's sake, like, I have to be harsh with myself. So I do prioritize it, but there's things like I had to go to London for work the other day, so and I didn't get in till 9:30, so I lost some sleep then. So as I've got older, I found that I do need that sleep, whereas in my sort of my 30s, I could get away with it a bit more. Um, as I've turned the whole 40 thing, it's become apparent that I really need that sleep. So I'll have a day if I can where I don't set the alarm, let my body sleep in. I'd love to be able to nap. One of my best friends, she's a napper and she has a nap most days, and I'm so jealous of that. I lay down to nap and my mind goes. So, I mean, if you can nap, they reckon yeah, it's some of the sort of the best business people in the world, don't they say that they have these power naps and that they come back from them and they're like totally revived. So yeah, if you can nap, even like a 30-minute nap, they're meant to work, aren't they? But yeah, I
just as
do
a caveat to that, I had
prioritize.
to text Jason and wake Jason up because he has an app.
Yeah, I'm so jealous of people that can nap. Like maybe that's what I should set myself a 2026 goal for. Learn how
It,
to nap.
it takes practice, and we call them nana naps.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, no. That's yeah. I mean, my dog has enough of her. But yeah, that sleep is so important. And one thing I have changed in the past few years is I've prioritized sleep over extra miles or extra training. Um, and I think the research that's put out there now, I actually read a book that changed. If when people say there's a book that changed their life, I read Matthew Walker While We Sleep, and it changed my life. When you find out what a lack of sleep can do to so many different things in your body, you just think, do you know what? That can wait, that work thing can wait, that run can wait. I'll miss that run. I'll miss that event. Like if I'm super tired and somebody said, can we catch up? I'll say, do you know what? I'm really, really sorry. I've not had enough sleep this week and I'm going to have to get some sleep because yeah, when they in that book they show so many studies that link back, and especially one for me was the links to dementia. And I've just lost my best friend's mum to dementia, and I just thought, no, I'm gonna have those extra hours sleep. So yeah, sleep, make it a priority. Because your next training session will be better. Your next, the day at work will be easier. Because we've all done it when you try to grind through and then you start at your laptop and you're thinking, oh, even the coffee don't work, and you look back at what you've written and you think, well, that don't even make sense. And somebody comes back to you and say, is everything okay? Like, what are you talking about there? That don't work out. And you think, yeah, just prioritize sleep. So yeah, and you just got to be hard with yourself. Like I will say to them, for God's sake, woman, put your phone now.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Anybody else?
Something that caught my attention is you were saying about doing sort of an hour here and there and building up to something like the spelling, because that was like 240 something miles or whatever it was. Is that just being out consistently, or do you have to do some sort of 100 mile days in preparation for it?
People don't.
Oh, wow.
Funnily enough, you would find you don't need to do. I mean, doing 100 mile race is something that arguably would take 6 months to recover from fully. Some people do. Some people just seem to bank race after race after race. Some people will do a 50 miler as a tune-up race, and they do a 50 miler as a tune-up race for a 100 miler. I think it all depends what one your body can handle,
Right.
and two what sits well for you mentally to so that you feel like you're prepared. When I used to train for 100 miles before, I would often throw in like maybe a 50-mile race just to stimulate sort of being in that race environment, ideally get it on similar terrain. I'd feel like it was a good tune up. But then as my priorities in life changed, I got a dog, my work priorities changed, it's not as easy. So I didn't do any races in the run up to the spine. I did some big weekends. I did like weekends where I would spend, you sort of it becomes more sort of like the hours about the time on feet. I think I did
Okay.
a 12-mile day, a 12-hour day, an 8-hour day, and then another 8-hour day. And it was just running, walking with the pack on, being out, and it's about getting those tired days on tired legs
Right.
banked that you feel confident that, do you know what, I've got that ability to work and navigate and look after myself when I'm tired. Because that's the hardest thing. Your body is an unbelievable thing and is capable of so much, and your legs would keep going and going and going. But it's like it's all up here, and that's the thing that'll get you to quit. Yeah, you can pick up an injury, and you need to stop. But a lot of the time when people pull out, and I've seen it, and it's like it's a head game, and the head's gone, and they can't get the head back into it. The body is capable of so much more. It really is your mind you've got to convince. Um, so yeah, for the winter spine, for example, the not this year that's just gone, last year when I did it, the first 24 hours were unreal. We had a perfect day setting off, and then this storm came in, and we'd had snow for the week leading up to it. And this storm came in, and all the snow was melting. We were waist deep in snow, falling into snow drifts. Couldn't see where you were going. We were Everybody was off route because you couldn't be on the Pennine Way. The snow drifts were falling through, and we got into the second checkpoint, and no, it must have been about 48 hours in, and I'd got in there with this girl. We'd done shared some miles together, and like we were beat. Like you needed to be in that checkpoint, you needed to have a refresh. And there was guys coming in that were really experienced, done the race before, and they were like, "Yeah, we're done, we're quitting." And we were like, "Why?" You've done it before. You're absolutely fine. The weather's going to get so much better. I'm done. I'm done. Like, what do you mean? Like, you're broken. Like, my head is done. I can't physically get my head into shape to do it. And they weren't saying that the body was done. They were actually saying, no, my head's done.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm just not mentally prepared to go through it. And I think that's a lot of things. Like, for me, going out to do a park run or going out to do a fast 5K, I'm like, yeah, I'm not mentally prepared to go sit. Like, my whole body's screaming at me for like 26 minutes or whatever my fastest 5K is. Like, no, I need to be in that mental space to do that. So yeah, a lot of the training is, it's not so much I've got to tick this mileage off, I've got to do this. It's about being mentally strong,
Mm.
and being mentally in a good place to go and do it.
Yeah, I've only ever done one long distance, or for me, long distance event, and that was halfway through, almost missed one of the checkpoints, which turned into I haven't got the mental strength to not finish this. I will just be broken, sat at the side of the road. So this
Yeah,
is going to hurt, but fine. Let's just get to it.
yeah,
And as you say, it's amazing what you can push your body through once your head's in the game of you will do this. Get
yeah,
moving.
yeah. It is, it's the head game, isn't it? And that thought of like having to sit with a DNF
Mm.
is worse than, the blister that's on your foot right now.
Yep. Nice.
Was it was it you, Jason, that had your hand waving?
You've kind of answered it really. I was going to dig into the head game piece a little bit because um, I've only really done one long distance event. I was a cycle from Manchester to London in a day. Uh, and I'm happy to admit, two-thirds of the way in, I was at the side of the road having on my own having an absolute crap argument with myself about whether I could finish this or not. And I must have looked like the one of the most insane people on the planet. Um, but to go from, I suppose my question is really made is like there's two parts to that mental game. Is that 7 year arc to getting to an event, and that in of itself is a huge head game to kind of say I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to get there for years. It's going to take me that long to do it, which is far beyond any time frame that most people even plan for. But then to be doing a multi-day event back to back, where I'm guessing there's probably long periods of time where you're on your own
But yeah,
and you're in the wilderness and you're either, if I was to hypothesize, really comfortable with your own thoughts and where your mind sometimes might go, or you've got some mechanism to block that out. I don't know if there's anything more you can add to that. You talked quite a bit to it. It's just for me, it's fascinating that just bridging, probably bridging more than 6 months in terms of a simple mind game. But then when you're in the event, being able to either kick yourself out of that downward spiral to I am finished. And
yeah,
at that point, I was finished. It took another rider to come by. He didn't so much kick me out as he basically said, my computer's not working. I haven't got the route. And it was such I don't know, the logic didn't compute for me. My mind couldn't process the fact that he was navigating without a route that kicked me back into I've now got to get this person to finish and
yeah.
napped with him for the rest of the route. But
It
how do
just
you do
that
that on a
just pulled you
multi-day?
out of
I
that.
couldn't
Just
process the logic, and that was the problem for me. Was I was just like I could not understand what he was saying, and I was like, this just makes no sense. You can't get 180k into a 300k cycle with no route and no cycle computer. This is nuts. And then I ended up doing that, but that was
that's just
one
pulled
day.
you out of your little. You were
I
sat
was
there,
done.
like you said,
Yeah,
have it in your own little head, having a pity party, like feeling sorry for yourself. This is so hard. What am I doing? And he's come along, and it's just taking your train of thought somewhere else, and you've been like, "Whoa, that's mental," and you've totally forgotten everything that you've been thinking about wallowing. We've all been ill when you sit on the sofa and you think, oh my God, I'm so poorly. This is the worst thing ever. And technically you're not that poorly, are you? You know, there's people in hospitals that are literally dying, but you've let yourself feel like so sorry for yourself. And you know, somebody asks how you're feeling, you're like, oh my God, I feel dreadful. Like my dad is the best person for it. You know, you'd think he was like terminally ill and he's got the sniffles. Um, I think you become the more you do these things, the more tricks you learn, and the better you become at navigating those what we call like lures. And you have like these peaks and troughs, peaks and troughs, peaks and troughs. And if you go into any sort of kind of long distance, multi-day, even like a marathon, and think that you are going to feel amazing the whole way through, if you get that once in your lifetime, like they say, like people sometimes have that one race in their life where they just feel amazing. Everything's perfect. The nutrition's perfect. The drinking's perfect. They feel perfect. They don't have anything that feels weird. You know, you're gonna have some feelings of shit. And especially in like the multi-day stuff and the really long stuff, is arguably you can spend more time feeling shit than you do feeling good. But I always remember, one, I've paid for this, so might as well try and enjoy it. Um, but two is for me is always having a why. Like, I'm not a person that will pick events or pick things to do that don't mean things to me that I don't really want to do. If I do, like, I really want to see that scenery, or I really want to go on that journey, or I really want to complete that thing. It's like I've got a deep why. It's like I've really wanted to do that. I've been really looking forward to this. I've put that work in, and I know I'm going to feel low, and I know I'm going to get in my head, and I know I'm going to think I physically can't do this. The the summer spine, for example, my feet were blistered from mile eight, so blistered. And the amount of times I'd literally, like a small child, threw myself on the floor with my rucksack on and just be like, oh, and then just took my shoes and socks off to just get the air to my feet. And I'd sit there thinking, can I physically do? And like at one point, I still had like nearly 200 miles to go when they first started. I was like, can I physically do 200 more miles on these blistered feet? And I thought, no, I can't. And I could have started crying, and I thought, but what I can do is I can get to the top of this hill. So I was like, I'll get to the top of this hill and then I'll just reassess. And then I got to the top of the hill and I was like, right, I can get to the next checkpoint. It's 15 miles away. I'll get to the next checkpoint, sort my feet out, we'll go from there. And it's like breaking things down into micro chunks, because sometimes the end, the full thing can seem overwhelming. And like some days I can sit there and be like, yeah, I'm going to stand back on, I'm going to try and get a place for the spine again. I'm like, shit, 268 miles. It's ridiculous. That's a really long way. And I'll be like, oh, it's just a couple of days off. It's a little holiday from work, and it's sort of, it's tricking your mind. Like if you say to yourself, that's a really long way, and people go, you can't possibly run that far. And you start listening to that and you think, well, no, I can't, can I? But if you say, well, there's loads of people that have done it before. Look at all the people that go out there and do it. Yeah, there's not thousands and thousands and thousands, it's not a common thing to do, but there's people that do it. And there's people like me, and there's people that arguably, are older than me and are less trained than me and are less experienced than me. So of course I can go do it. I'll just break it down, break it down into micro chunks. I, I can I can easily be a person that can feel overwhelmed with like my jobs to do list at work. If I looked at all the things I've got to do, all the projects I'm working on, it's probably 6 months worth of work. And I'm such a person that always wants to be ticking things off that actually, if I drink too much coffee, I can start to feel anxiety and feel overwhelmed. But if I sat there and think about it all too much, I'm like, well, I don't know what to do next. And I've got so much on that I'm just never going to get it all done, and I need somebody to help me. And people keep railroading me, and people keep coming to me with their problems. And then I think, no, just make some inroads into everything, every single day and every single week, and you're working towards that end project. And that's the same with a race or an event. Just work, break it down into blocks. Like life is blocks. Like I'm sure, like Chris trains you all. I'm sure, like he doesn't give you your full plan all in one go, because all everybody by nature you just look, well, what am I going to be doing the last week? You don't need to know what you're going to be doing on the last week, because actually what you're going to do on the last week depends on how you get on in the first 3 weeks. So, and then you build from there. And it's the same for a race. Don't think about how you're going to feel in those last few miles, because you don't know how good the start's going to be, how much of a shit show the middle is going to be, but your ending might be absolutely amazing, or it might start shit, be good in the middle, but even better at the end, or it might be really good at the start, okay in the middle, and totally shit at the end. But don't worry about that end bit. Just be where you are now, essentially, and then break it down into micro chunks. Really long answer. Yeah.
It's a good no, it is a good answer. And thank you for that. I will just ask you one more question. And it's about a point you made around safety, particularly for female participants or anybody wanting to go out and do a hike. And I have this with some of the groups that hike. What advice would you give to this group, any other um, female that wants to go out and do days in the hills, that wants to go and do multi-day event where they're on their own and they're concerned about their potentially concerned about their safety?
So, I mean, there's a lot of safety sort of protocols to follow. Um, First one is make sure that somebody knows where you're going, make sure that somebody knows where you're starting from and what time you're expected back. Um, have somebody that knows that and that you're going to check in with. Make sure you've got a good idea of the route that you're going. But I would never ideally want anybody to go out and play in remote places without being able to read a map. It scares me now that so many people just go out following just off a GPS and can't read a map. GPS fails, phones run out of battery, especially in the winter. You could lose your phone, you could lose your watch, all sorts of things happen. You need to know how to be able to get back, not only to where you started, but if there's bad weather that comes in, to get down to somewhere of safety. So if you want to go play in remote places, I would always say learn how to read a map. A massive. That is such a confidence booster. Like I've taken people out and been with people and they can't. And when we've needed to navigate and go a different way or get down, they're like, you just get the map out and you're like, right, we're going to go that way and it's going to take us this long. It's roughly going to be, we're going to be out of this storm in 2 hours tops. Are you okay? Have you had enough food? Right, let's go, follow me. And they're like, that could have been pretty scary. And I'm like, yeah, but if you'd have gone out on your own, how would you have done that? And they're like, yeah, I'd have been in trouble. So I'm like, so just go do a navigation course. Like, there are a couple of days, don't cost much. Learn how to use a compass and a map and just learn the basic skills of survival as well, which, they will teach you. Having the correct kit, having things like survival bags, having a whistle, knowing the correct protocol, um, first aid kit, good head torch. See people buying, shit things. Like there's one thing that I would never quibble on is decent, safe outdoor kit. You can save money on all sorts. You can save money on t-shirts, leggings, things like that. But invest in a good waterproof. It'll save your life. Make sure you've got all the credit. Go on the Mountain Rescue's website and tick off that list. Because having those things genuinely does make you feel safer, weirdly. Like I've done races and stuff where you look at the mandatory kit list and it's not what I would deem to be the kit list that's required to go into the mountains. So I've put it in myself. And I know people that have come across people in races that have had falls and it's not been races where you've had to have specific stuff, and they've pulled stuff out of their rucksack and kept them warm and been able to administer basic first aid because they've been the first people there. So there is that. But I think a big one for I always say to people is I've spent a lot of time running, and the only times I've ever felt unsafe by other people is in London and Manchester. I've never in the mountains come across, or even just in remote places, come across anybody that I've remotely felt scared or intimidated by. Because let's be fair, weirdos and serial killers and all those things that that you could potentially wind yourself up about are hanging around in the middle of the most somewhere, just thinking that a random person's going to come across, are they? Because chances are they're not. You
No.
know, they're they're going to be in towns and city centres. I was only saying to somebody the other day, I was like, well, yeah, but the Moors murderers didn't get their people that they murdered from the Moors. They just got rid of them there because there was nobody there and got them from built up places. So and just things like that, I always like laugh about to myself when I'm running out there in the dark. I'm like genuinely like the only thing you see are animals or another obscure weirdo like you, and you're like, oh.
My people.
But this was one that it was on a podcast by a woman that I was listening to today, and she was like, and it was about sort of running with a head torch on in the dark and it being in the dark, and she said when you're running with a bright head torch on, nobody knows whether you're a man or a woman anyway. And I've never thought of it like that. And I was like, well, actually, they don't. For women that can feel like scared and yeah, if you've got a bright head torch on, somebody coming towards you, they haven't got a clue who you are. You're just somebody with a bright head torch. Um, so yeah, all those safety things. If you can go with somebody, it's the biggest safety thing that there is. Like, if you're not comfortable going on your own, don't go on your own. Like, there's another person out there that will want to go for a walk, a run. Like, there's so many great groups out there now, running groups, outdoor groups. Um, yeah, get some friends that like doing those things and go with them because it is safer to be with somebody. Let's be fair, you can soon fall over, hurt yourself. Um, and I've had falls when I've been on my own. I thought, oh, that could have been a bit different. I could have been crawling back. Um, and they do happen to people. So yeah, if you can go with somebody, go with somebody. You know, don't have to be on your own, or go on a popular route. We all know where the little bit more popular places are in the peaks, or a little bit more popular places in the lakes or Wales or things like that. If something does happen to you and you do need help, somebody's going to come across you quickly. But yeah, always make sure somebody knows where you are. It's a massive one and what time you're going to be back.
That reminds me of like that thing on Instagram, isn't it, where it says, if you want to avoid idiots, go where idiots can't survive.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Carly, you got any questions before we start finishing off?
I have one more question. So, Bev, do you do any sort of mental training outside of actual physical training? And I know that the physical training, the mental training does come with it. But like, do you do any like, let's say that you're maybe injured, you can't do as much. Do you do any visualization, like breath work, anything in those
Uh,
lines?
I have just been injured for 2 months, barely able to run, and it was arguably the hardest time I've had mentally since I closed my business 5 years ago, which was really hard, making people redundant, and things like that, which was a very, very like tough time, just navigating it, just a heavy time. Um, and I think it was good for me to go through that again because it reminded me how I'd sort of become to rely on running a bit as a crutch for life, and that was my release and the thing that I enjoyed, and it wasn't there. It was taken away from me, so I had to make sure that my mental health was in check. and that I'm mentally strong. And if running was taken away from me forever, that I'd be happy. And yes, it takes some wrapping my head around, but um, I think sometimes life's not a bed of roses all the time. We have highs, we have lows, and I think mental health training can take on a lot of different forms. I think a lot of it comes from being comfortable with yourself, being happy with where you are in life, who you are, that you've got good people around you, that you enjoy, that you have things in life that do make you happy, but not pinning that happiness all on one thing, because that is dangerous. Because if that's taken away from you, like you can easily have the rug pulled out from you. People have partners that suddenly leave them. They suddenly lose a loved one. You can lose your dream job. You can be made redundant. You can lose your house. Horrendous things can happen, and that's going to be really hard. But if your whole life revolves around just that one thing and that goes, you're going to crumble really, really quickly. In terms of my sort of general resilience and mental resilience for doing hard things and being able to bounce back from shit. I read a lot of books. When I go to bed, I always think that last thing that you put into your mind at night is a strong time. Um, Read a lot of books by people that have been in the military. I think some of the best in the world, like the Navy SEALs and RSAS guys, like you can't argue with their mental resilience, can you? Also a lot of business leaders and things like that. I think a lot of what they can talk about and you can learn from them, you can take into your aspects of life. You don't have to be, a business leader or, some high-powered CEO to take on board some of what, they're sort of learning. Um, and also just doing those hard things and getting uncomfortable teaches you mental resilience. And I think and I can be the worst for this. I can get so wrapped up in what's next, what's next, what's next, and what am I going to find to do that's arguably more difficult for me or more of a challenge, that I never actually reflect on what I have done. And when I was injured recently, and I was stuck pedaling on a bike for God knows how many hours a week because I couldn't run. And I actually reflected back on all the challenges that I'd done and all the things that my body had allowed me to do and all the things that I'd trained for and all the shit times that had gone on that I'd worked through and things that we'd been through at work and things that, I'd been through with my family that weren't nice times. And I actually was like, yeah, they were hard, but came through them and we came through them and life's still really, really good, Life's not a bad thing really, is it? It's how you look at things. We've got a couple of people at work and there's life's so shit, everything's shit. And I'm like, we're all living in the same world, we're all living in the same country. We could all argue that yeah, it's a bit of a shit show, but Jesus Christ, we're not living in America, are we? So it's a perception thing as well, and I think um we're all pretty good at navigating hard stuff because we're all still here. And you guys, you work with Chris, you train with Chris, so you're obviously about bettering yourself, and Chris isn't going to be setting you easy workouts, he's going to be setting things that challenge you, and he's going to get to do things that challenge you. So remind yourself and say, learn to pat yourself on the back, and say, well done to me for doing that, because not everybody does that.
When all else fails, remind yourself that you're paying for the privilege of doing it.
That is always the thing. Like if you know them, there's nothing that'll get you to appreciate something. Then I've paid a lot of money for that. Yep, I'm definitely enjoying it.
Charlie, do you want to finish off?
Sorry, being technology. I think I've done it. No, all my questions I had going along, they've all been answered. But it was all really interesting because I think for me, hearing that it was a 7-year sort of journey for you to get to spine was really interesting because I have goals and I think sometimes I convince myself that I'm not working towards them when I am, but I'm breaking it down.
Yeah.
You sort of realize these big things, they do take time. And if you can't cram in, cramming in, training is just not feasible for all of us. So it
No.
was nice to know that, yeah, don't think that I'm not getting there because I am chipping away. But it was really interesting because a lot of what I want to do does involve getting out. And as a female, I do carry a lot of anxieties about getting out on my own as well. So it's all really, really interesting stuff. So thank you. Feel all fired up. Go and get out there now.
Hey. But yeah, honestly, like I think we live in this world where Amazon have got a lot to answer for, aren't they? Like you can have something delivered to your house the same day. We live in this instant world. But we all went to school and we didn't get our GCSEs in 3 weeks, did we? We worked towards them for 5 years. You go get a degree, it's at least 3 years of work. Um, People work to build businesses and it takes them 20 years to get where they want to be.
Yeah.
And I think the difference between people that are okay with that long game and these people that want the instant Instagram like or the gratification or the well done is that actually when you work towards something that does have a longer goal, when you get there, the sense of achievement is far greater than your Amazon parcel turning up the next day because it's the novelty's worn off of that now, and you just expect it. But when you've
Absolutely.
worked towards something for all that time, when you get there, honestly, the overwhelming sense of achievement. There's a picture of, I think it's a picture, well, there's a picture that Chris used when I got to the finish line of the Spine in the summer. And there's a thing about you touch the wall at the Border Hotel. And my best friend was there, and she's been my best friend for 20 years. So she's been there through all the years of training. There's been highs, there's been lows, there's been races. I had a space for it before, and I had to um, not do it because I'd just broken up with a partner, and my mental game went there. I just ended a 4 year relationship, and there was no way that I could have endured standing on that start line. Like I just wasn't mentally strong enough. Um, and when I saw her and she was waiting for me there and I touched the wall, and I'm not a big crier, I just burst into tears and I sobbed like a small child because of all the years that it had taken it to get there. If it had just been a 3 month training plan, I didn't feel like that when I first finished a marathon, what is it, 12 weeks, something straight for a marathon. I didn't have that overriding sense of emotion because it's quite a quick process. But yeah, when you're working towards something, when you get there, whatever it is you're working towards,
Mm.
it will feel amazing.
That's exciting.
And if you ever want to reach out and there's everything you want to chat about, any of you just drop me a message. My inbox is always open. Always happy to chat through anything. But I think you're in good hands with Chris.
Maybe
Maybe.
50-50.
Pretty sure he's got better mountain skills than me anyway.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, thanks a lot for that, Bev. Really, honestly appreciate your time. That's been brilliant.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Been
thank
really
It's
you.
lovely to meet you
informative.
all.
Yeah, been really informative and really enjoyed listening to the sort of ins and outs of what goes on behind the scenes, behind this sort of stuff.
A lot of boring, not fancy. There's no fancy stuff. I think again, going back to like what you see on Instagram, everything's got to look fancy and cool and Instagrammable, and a lot of it's just like really mundane, like ticking boxes, little incremental growth, like building your mileage week on week, building your skills week on week. It's not that fancy, it's not that glamorous, but it's enjoyable. And when you love the process and you enjoy the process and that end goal or whatever you're working towards, whether you're just doing it just to be a better person and just genuinely keep growing, like that's enough, isn't it? Social media and all that hype, that's not the real world. Social media might be gone tomorrow, but you're still there and you've still got goals and you still want to be a better person. So just always have that in the back of the mind.
What a little paragraph to finish on.
Absolutely.
Nice one. All right, cheers. Thanks for coming, guys. Obviously, I will hopefully have this recording uploaded so you can obviously watch it back. I know not too good at that sort of stuff, but we'll hopefully have that sorted. And I will speak to you all soon. And Bev, I'll shoot you a message because that was really good. Thank you very much.
Cheers, thanks for having me.
Bev.